We begin tonight with what appears to have been a defining day in the US presidential primaries. On the right, and it's an anti-establishment right that appears now to be resolute in that position, Donald Trump beat Marco Rubio in Rubio's own state, Florida. Mr. Rubio was touted as the kind of Republican candidate that could appeal in the centre. Remember, Trump's winning Republican primaries on the right. But to be president, a broader appeal may well be required. Mr. Rubio, the Florida senator who couldn't actually win Florida, was faced with a brutal reality. Carrying on was suddenly pointless.
While it is not God's plan that I be president in 2016 or maybe ever, and while today my campaign is suspended, the fact that I've even come this far is evidence of how special America truly is. And all the reason more why we must do all we can to ensure that this nation remains a special place. I ask the American people, do not give in to the fear. Do not give in to the frustration. We can disagree about public policy. We can disagree about it vibrantly, passionately. But we are a hopeful people, and we have every right to be hopeful. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Marco Rubio effectively pulling out. He lost, of course, to Donald Trump in Florida after a week in which protests in Chicago and Kansas City appeared to rattle him. Mr. Trump's status as the outsider candidate who appeals to the anger and alienation of people who are deeply mistrustful of the political establishment appears to have been strengthened. Taking Florida was a big victory for Trump, and he enjoyed it.
To win the states that we won and to win by the margins, and especially, look, this is my second home, Florida. To win by that kind of a number is incredible. It's record setting. And I have to say it that number one, I want to congratulate Marco Rubio on having run a really tough campaign. He's tough, he's smart, and he's got a great future. He's got a great future. But I have to say, and nobody has ever in the history of politics received the kind of negative advertising that I have. Record. By the way, mostly false. I wouldn't say 100%, but about 90%. Mostly false, vicious, horrible. They say it was 18 million the first week, meaning last week, and 25 million. It added up to over $40 million. And you explain it to me because I can't. My numbers went up.
Donald Trump, more on him in a moment. Florida was one of 5 states decided on what was Super Tuesday 3. Trump lost the other winner-takes-all state, Ohio, to John Kasich. Kasich is a distant third, though, in the Republican race, and he was fourth until Rubio pulled out. On the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton won Florida, Ohio and North Carolina, giving her what appears on the face of it to be an almost insurmountable lead over her rival, Bernie Sanders.
This is another Super Tuesday for our campaign. Thank you, Florida. Thank you, North Carolina. Thank you, Ohio. We are moving closer to securing the Democratic Party nomination and winning this election in November. You know, because of all of you and our supporters across the country, our campaign has earned more votes than any other candidate, Democrat or Republican. And I want to congratulate Senator Sanders for the vigorous campaign he's waging. Now today, all of you in the states where contests were held voted to break down the barriers that hold us all back so every one of us can share in the promise of America.
Hillary Clinton, who had a really good day. More on her later in the program. But let's go live to our correspondent in Florida now, where Trump was triumphant over Rubio. Steve Mort joins us now live. Steve, there's a bit of a delay, so I'm just going to ask you the big question and let you answer it, really. Is Trump set? Is this the Republican nomination for him now?
Well, you know, on the face of it, it certainly seems so. It was, as you mentioned, a pretty dismal performance for Marco Rubio. He's the home state senator here in Florida. He's been the senator in this state since 2010, when he got into power on a wave of Tea Party support. He lost heavily, and we'd expected that. He'd been 20-plus points down in the polls here in Florida over recent weeks, and certainly scale of Donald Trump's victory here in Florida tonight really seemed to bear that out. Now, whether or not Donald Trump can guarantee that he will be the nominee for the Republican Party, to use a cliche, really kind of actually remains to be seen. In terms of actual delegates, he is far ahead at the moment. But if you look at a couple of things, there may be a route for the Republican leadership, or the Republican establishment, as many refer to them, to see another candidate gain the nomination. And the way that works is if it comes to the convention later this year, where the nominee is officially chosen, if Kasich and Cruz together have more delegates than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump has not yet reached the 1,237 delegates that he needs in order to guarantee the nomination, then you may have what's called a brokered convention here. And at that point, all bets are off, as you would say. What it means is that the delegates are up for grabs. It means that they could go either way, and at that point, you could have a nominee other than Donald Trump. That is very unlikely. It seems that Donald Trump, based on the scale of his wins and the polling in states to come, does have an avenue to 1,237 delegates. Neither John Kasich nor Ted Cruz has that. So at the moment, it looks like pretty much a foregone conclusion. But if you look at Ohio and the win that John Kasich scored there and all the delegates that he gets, you know, that could be a speed bump, if not a roadblock to Donald Trump. But at the moment, it seems like the wind is behind Donald Trump's back.
Why is the wind behind his back, Steve? Because the rest of the world, well, much of the rest of the world is looking bewildered at this. There's a great editorial that's just come out in The Nation this afternoon saying we have to take this man seriously. We can't reduce the American primaries to a circus. In other words, there has to be a concentration on more than just his irrationality on the stage, on more than just the protests. We have to drill down into his policies, what he stands for. But are the people who support him worried about that, or do they just like the fact he stands against the current order?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, as you mentioned there. You know, over the last few weeks, I've been to several of these candidate rallies, these big rallies, and what you hear over and over and over again is they like Donald Trump because he's not a politician. They like Donald Trump because he tells it the way it is. When he says something that's politically incorrect, you know, they say that's Donald Trump telling it the way it is. And that's what people like. They're very, very fed up with the establishment, what they see as the status quo. Now, why are they fed up with that? Why is it that there's such vitriolic opposition to the sort of establishment, if you like, this time around? Well, many analysts point to the GOP, the Republican Party themselves, saying they've sown the seeds since President Obama came into power for that anger. Since President Obama came into power, really the opposition in Congress has been just monumental to President Obama's agenda. There's been this sort of aim to stop his policies at all costs. And that sort of anger, the reason that people are feeling bad about government is, according to many people, they've been told to feel bad about the government for many, many years. And now, this time around, as the election nears, you know, maybe their chickens are coming home to roost, according to some analysts that I've heard. And Donald Trump is sort of the manifestation of that. He is sort of embodying that anger. He's giving people permission to be angry. He's giving people permission to be politically incorrect. And that's sort of what's propelling him to the success in the polls, even as the rest of the world watches and scratches its head.
Steve, I know you're following the Trump campaign there and you're in Florida behind Trump, but can we just talk briefly about Hillary Clinton? We're going to discuss her with the Guardian correspondent later on, but she had a really good day. Is she now set as the Democratic nominee?
Certainly looks like it, both in terms of elected delegates, but also in terms of superdelegates as well. The Democratic Party has this superdelegate system, which was put into place, if you like, by the party elders to ensure that somebody who is electable gets picked as the nominee. And Hillary Clinton has the lion's share of those superdelegates as well. So really, with tonight's victories, it gives her a formidable lead over Bernie Sanders. It's very difficult to see how Sanders comes back from this and gets enough delegates to surpass Hillary Clinton. But we did see it in 2008 when Barack Obama got the nomination. Most of those superdelegates were with behind Hillary Clinton initially, and as Barack Obama scored more and more successes in the primaries, we saw them gradually drift over and switch towards Hillary Clinton as he appeared to be more electable. That doesn't seem to be happening this time. Having said that, we're still waiting for results to come in from Missouri. Very, very close there at the moment, neck and neck within a 0.3 percentage points. I think I saw at the last check. It may be a bit different now. But that certainly looks like it could go Bernie Sanders' way. Bit too early to tell. But even if he does manage to pull that off, it's going to be a steep challenge for him to surpass Hillary Clinton.